Welcome to Love Your Coaching. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to answer this question. Do coaches give advice? I'd love to make this the shortest video ever and say no and then move on, but I think it merits a little bit more than that. Why this question? I've got to say, it's the most controversial of all of the questions I think that we ask about coaching. And it is the one that probably draws out the most polemics and the most opposed ideas. And certainly I can see that I got some very good friends of mine who are coaches who don't agree with the perspective of not giving advice. I also want to say it's the number one issue that I think that coaches in training come along with, the number one worry. We ask it on the pre-course quiz and we ask it on day one. And almost everyone says, yeah, I want to learn how to not give advice, or I'm worried that I won't be able to give up giving advice. So I want to be really clear. When I'm talking about coaches not giving advice, I'm talking about coaches working with coachees, having proper coaching sessions with someone who has agreed to be our coachee. I'm not talking about coaches in everyday conversations, people who are maybe using their coaching skills in an ad hoc, spontaneous way. When someone comes along and says, have you got 10 minutes? I just want to pick your brains on something. We can mix and match coaching and any other approach that we'd like in those moments. Of course, it's absolutely fine. So I'm really only talking about the discrete coachee, and I really want to make that point. So I've got a few things to say about this, and I really welcome your views. I know lots of people agree with me, but I know loads absolutely don't. So do share your thoughts and your ideas. Before we get into the detail, the first thing I wanted to reflect on is the fact that the coaching does change over time. There's a very interesting article by an Australian coach called Anthony Grant. He's done a lot of academic papers, and he's sort of followed the trajectory of coaching from being non-directive at a period and then being really directive and then moving back to a non-directive period and then back to a directive one over the last 4 decades or so. And I get that, and I agree with that, and I understand that coaching in and of itself could be defined in a different way. But where I'm at is it's defined in a certain way. Coaching is defined by, for example, if you've seen the definition video, defined by the International Coach Federation as a thought creative process for the coachee to maximize their own potential. John Whitmore, who came up with the GROW model, talked about the coach not being the problem solver. There's loads of literature around the idea that the coachee is empowered to come up with their own ideas and solutions. Now, if that wasn't the case, if coaching was just in the mix with many other methods of support, training and teaching and self-help and as much as you like, mentoring, that it wouldn't be a problem. But it's because I think coaching has really set out its stall, and the coaching bodies have set out their stall to say that coaching works by empowering the other person to come up with their own answers. That's a starting point. And maybe I'm a bit too inflexible, but I can't really move away from that starting point. That's the point. We are saying to the other person, you've got the answers. So my big thing, I think, about saying that coaches don't offer advice is because we have helped our coachee to see that they've got the answers. So if we start offering advice, we're saying you've got the answers, but not all of them. Perhaps you can take this little answer. Perhaps I can give you a tiny little nudge. We're then saying you haven't got all the answers. And that, I think, is a risky road to go down. I'll talk in a moment about the benefits of not offering advice, because I think that that's quite a handy thing and maybe under discussed. But I also wanted to say we're giving this rule, but I'm talking about advice. Sometimes there are times when coaches do have to be directive. It's not often, but the coaching room is not the confidentiality of, for example, the doctor-patient or the lawyer-client. If the coachee says something or does something that means that there's a safeguarding risk or a well-being risk or a significant risk, reputation or something of that nature for the organization, then there might be a time that the coach has to step in. there might be a time that the coach has to intervene and say something. I've done it 3 times in my 18 years of practice that I've had to say something, and I think other coaches, it's quite similar. So, yes, there are times. There are times when we have to say something. But I'm talking about, oh, you think of a tip. Oh, I could share this tip with you. It's that. That's what we're trying to avoid. That's what we're talking about, not giving advice. So, what about the pushback? The pushback, I think, that we hear is amongst, it probably goes into 2 or 3 categories. The first category is that the coach has got something. I've got something to give. I've thought about something. This might help. I know the answer. And then combined with the second thing of the coachee didn't mind. They were okay with it. They were fine. In fact, they said that bit added value. It was really good. I can accept that. So, but there are a couple of things. One is that just because we know something, it doesn't mean we have to stop coaching and start mentoring. Think about how much you know on how many different subjects, coaches. You will know loads of things about loads of subjects. Are we saying we can only coach people on subjects that we don't know anything about? In which case, we've probably got a really tiny little field of who we can coach and how we can coach. The fact of the matter is, we probably all know something. We've probably all got some ideas that we could share with a coachee. It doesn't mean that we have to start drifting towards advice. And then the second thing that the coachee says, but it was great. I liked it and I really appreciated it. And I love when you share those bits. I get that. And perhaps there is a time and a place. And I'll talk a little bit about the compromises people have found. But the moment we do that, we take away the agency from the person. We say, you don't need to do any more thinking now. We say that you have got the opportunity to learn from me. You've got the opportunity to use this thing. Even if we're sharing, I read this book, that you might find that helpful. So we're trying not to undermine any of that aspect. And technically, I think about it like, if you are going to be a coach who shoves in a bit of advice, when do you do that? Like, at what moment? Do you say, for example, the first time that you ask a coachee the question, what could you do? And they're like, I don't know, I can't really think of anything. Right, that moment. Or do you wait until maybe you've asked it a couple of times and they definitely have hit a bit of a wall and share then? Do you share the moment that you think of something? Oh, they could do this, and then offer it. Or is there another time? It's really hard to know, isn't it? It's really hard to know when, if you are going to offer advice, when you're going to do that. So I hope you're getting a bit of a picture. I don't want this to put people off. I think that lots of people come to coach training really worried, A, that they won't be able to give up giving advice, and B, that somehow they will never be a good coach because they want to carry on giving advice. So the first thing I'd say is there's no hurry. If you're learning to be a coach, then there is no hurry to give this up. It's like all of the skills that we learn. Some are slower, some are quicker. If I think about as a comparison with learning languages, I do a lot of language learning, and I find that the things that are easier are the vocabulary. The things that are harder are the grammar and the pronunciation. So advice definitely goes into the harder category. So don't worry. Let it sit there in the I will gradually work my way towards it. And secondly, if you really, really, really think I can't give up giving advice, actually, this is too important for me. And remember, I'm only talking about it in the coaching conversations. You can give advice the rest of the week as much as you like to your colleagues, to your reports, to your partner. Good luck with that, and to your kids. It's fine. Of course you can. It's really up to you. But if you really think my coaching style is going to involve advice, then define it as such and make sure that that's what your coachees are signing up for. So there is a bit of a narrative in coaching. People will have a hybrid approach. In fact, when I was first trained, it was a hybrid approach. We coached, and then there was a part of our coaching model, which was called the presentation. We would get out coloured pens and draw pretty pictures of to explain the dynamics of what's going on for the coachee. And the coachees loved it. But I realized eventually that was just a bit of coach vanity, being able to be the expert in their lives. And I moved away from it. But you can offer something if you're really clear. And I hear language, for example, a blended approach. I blend coaching plus. I work with lots of financial coaches, and their model is a blending of coaching and financial acumen, financial awareness, financial education. That's fine. There's an offer there. Some people call themselves coach consultants. The idea that I'm a coach, but I'm also a consultant. So I'm going to do some coaching, but I'm also going to consult. And if you're skillful, you can mix them up in the same conversation. And there can be a benefit there. There can be a real benefit. The coachee or the client, let's call them, they understand and they know what the game is. So they're fine with it. And the last example I can think of is the many head teachers we work with. We've got over 100 head teachers we've trained to be level 7 coaches, and they all get 5 fellow head teachers to coach one-to-one over a couple of years. And they report very regularly their coaches, head teachers, new head teachers. They always ask for advice. Well, what would you do? What do you think, Jane? What do you think, Christian? They always ask. And so the coach has made peace with, I'm not going to tell you in a coaching session. I'm not even going to tell you immediately after the coaching session. I'm going to make sure that you're really clear on your actions. And then I might add something in to top it up. And I'm doing it after the session. And preferably, I'm doing it on another topic, on a parallel topic. I'm letting you pick my brains about what I might know in our shared area. So there are ways to make peace. There are ways to make peace, but I think it's all about making sure that there's contracting with our coachee. So I haven't started throwing things around, but it's something that I feel really strongly about. I definitely worry about it. Of course I do. And I'll probably go to the end of my career thinking, have I made a terrible mistake? One of my coach friends said to me, if you think of something that could help someone else and you don't tell them, it's cruel. And that word has, she said that to me about a decade ago, and I still worry about that. I don't think it is, but how can I not worry about that? Of course. I reflect on, in our coach training, we ask every group on day 1 to do a pros and cons activity. And they do pros and cons of advice, and then pros and cons of the coaching mode, not giving advice. And each of those 4 questions, the boxes get filled up. Loads of benefits of giving advice and loads of downsides of giving advice. Some downsides of a coaching approach, but loads of benefits of the coaching approach. So don't give up giving advice generally in your life. Know where your knowledge, your wisdom, your impact can be had by sharing the things that you want to share. But if you want to really empower your coaches, you really want them to take ownership and agency over whatever it is that they want to work on, then I can't say strongly enough that the non-advisory approach, I think, is the one to take. But I'm really interested in seeing what the comments are going to be like on this. If there's a lot of people who've been in training with us, I'm hoping that they'll say nice things and in agreement because they've gone through this process themselves. If there are people who don't agree, it's absolutely fine. Let us know. There are reasonable arguments and present them. Ultimately, as coaches, we have to make peace with how we're going to work. There's nothing in codes of ethics to say that we shouldn't go down this road, that we shouldn't give advice. I think there are words in the coaching competencies that do say things like the coach should remain in coaching mode and not move to consultant mode. But codes of ethics, not so much. So we have to make our peace with what we're going to do. How about that as a topic? I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found that stimulating. I'd be really interested to know if you trained with other people apart from with us, what were your providers saying? Were they saying it's fine to shift to coach from coaching to mentoring, or are they as strict / pedantic as me? That would be interesting to know, wouldn't it? Do let us know your thoughts. Do let us know your comments. Please keep enjoying your coaching, enjoying the value that you add to your coaches, however it is that you work with them. Have a good day. Happy coaching.